All right. So I see a recording message. Does anybody else have that? Maybe. Okay. Thanks, Liz. All right. So today, one of my very favorite things to talk about, besides horses, is mindset, because I have really come to find, whether it's my own personal life and growth or journey, um, or people that come to me looking for counseling or looking for to gain confidence with their horse, um, or people that want to facilitate with horses. Mindset is like the foundation for everything. And it's one of those things, I wish we could have had a class on it in high school, because one of the things that I share about a lot is the subconscious mind, and how it's responsible from anywhere from 88 to 93% of what happens to us on a daily basis. And it's a simple concept. It's not always easy if we aren't aware of it and don't know how to help the subconscious bring us what we want rather than what we don't want. Um, and mindset and subconscious definitely are aligned and need to be congruent for us to really get what we want. So basically, we can program our subconscious by the thoughts that we think over and over again. And our mindset is kind of like the soil, the foundation from which we can grow things. And whether we want to grow weeds, whether we want to grow flowers, whether we want to grow grass, that doesn't matter at all. What matters is that we choose what we want to plant and tend to, or fertilize, except sometimes you might want to get rid of the poop. But so if we have a mindset that is open and curious, for example, that of course will take us to a different place if we have a mindset that's steeped in expectation or judgments. And if we look at, for example, I'll use a horse because we're all horse people, and that's one of the things that's important to us. And if we look, like we were talking just before this call about having a horse get on a teeter-totter. And so this morning I had Petey coming up to the teeter-totter, and basically I had no expectation for what he needed to do. I was very curious about what he would choose to do with the teeter-totter, and I did extend an invitation for him to approach the teeter-totter and put his feet on it. And so what happened was he came up, he put his front feet on the teeter-totter, and then he stopped. Now, how I had been educated in my early years of horsemanship, that was kind of okay, but he needed to do more. He needed to, complete this whole activity of getting on the teeter-totter. And so had I had that mindset, he had done something, but it wasn't complete. It wasn't good enough. And that puts a little bit of pressure on my activities, my choices, how I go about trying to accomplish what I have put in my mind as the goal. And not that anything is wrong with that. We can always hold that out as a hope, because I think my overarching hope actually is to get him to put himself on that teeter-totter and then be able to bring it into balance himself. Not for me to shove him around once he gets on that teeter-totter to make him balance, but for him to do it himself. And so as long as I keep myself in that kind of like that growth-oriented mindset of being curious, seeing what happens, not putting an expectation or ultimatum on how things have to be done, I can be in the present moment, see what happens, and connect very differently to my horse than if I'm giving him a command. And so, that whole little story that I shared with you, it's something that now for me is a lot more natural than what I would have done before, which was, because I told my horse to do something, he needed to do it. And it's a whole different internal journey, because now not only are we doing things together, but he's more of an active participant in what we're doing together. And of course, in the healing work, what I want the most is for my horses to be active participants, because even if I had wonderful, fabulous, fantastic ideas, if I'm just telling my horse what it needs to do or offer in a session, I am not enlisting any of its wisdom or, employing the sentient nature of the horse to bring that wisdom and share it. And what I've discovered so much is the more that I invite the horses, not only to honor my requests, but just invite them to share an opinion, the more that they do that. And the things that they come up with, are things that I can't even imagine sometimes, because of the depth and the realness and that, impact of the present moment. It's just really deep. And so what I am going to do and offer coming up in January, well, I guess this is January, coming up next week, is offer a coaching program to help really instill a growth mindset, and for us to focus on what's important to us, what our priorities are, what our values are. And when we align our mindset with that, it's more like we're operating from a heart set. We're playing full on and engaged in where we're trying to go. And of course, this is one of those things that is simple. It's not always easy, because our minds are basically like Teflon for positive experiences and Velcro for negative. And that comes from, when we lived more as prey and predator ourselves. And because of our reticular activating system, which was meant to keep us alive before, it would, and still does, it does not like change. It wants us to stay the same, to stay safe, not take any risks, and, not put us in a vulnerable position. And of course, when we want to grow, we have to change. And, that's one of the things too, I think a lot of us, change isn't always easy. And it's very common for people to say that they hate change, they don't like change. And the more that we say those things, the more that they sink in. And if we hate change, but there has to be an element of change for growth, we're setting ourselves up for some limitation, or having to work a lot harder than we really need to, if we pay attention to how our, what our mindset is, what our perspective is, what we're looking at, and how we're kind of navigating that journey. Because the only way that we can really grow is by building on a success. And so if we have a mindset that we can look at what we've done and pull out those gems where we have succeeded, and give ourselves some credit for that, then that allows us to be able to take a next step. And a lot of us have kind of a humble framework. We don't want to seem arrogant. We don't want to seem better than. Um, we don't want to brag about things, but acknowledging what we've done, our accomplishments, is not bragging. It's not being boastful. There's a difference between being proud and being arrogant. And myself, that's been one of my huge issues. And I come across a lot of people that share that issue. Hopefully, not everybody has to go through it as much as I did, but that's a real big thing. And so, if we can take stock of where we are, we're not locking ourselves into staying there. If we look at our situation and accept it, that doesn't mean we're agreeing to stay there. It doesn't mean we have to want to continue. We don't even have to really like it, but we have to look at what is before we can allow ourselves to spring off of that and push off into what we want or what will be. So a lot of these concepts, again, they're simple but not always easy. And so being able to have the support of a group and kind of navigate through the process, I've heard both 21 and 28 days to create a habit. And so we're going to go for 6 weeks, which will more than cover building, creating a different habit, a new habit. And then hopefully by continuing to practice it, that will start to seep more and more into what happens in everyday life without us having to be so conscious and deliberate about it. And it really does happen. And I think, one of the great things about combining this with the horses, they give us, I think, a lot of motivation and inspiration to keep on going. And I'll share some of the ways that we've been holding the space for the horses to release tension, because not only does that help get us in the moment, really have a state of presence, but it helps calm anxiety, alleviate depression, and allow our intuition to really come into effect. And, we've all had lots and lots of life experiences, horse experience. We've, had a few trips around the sun too, and we have our own things that speak to us and call us forward. And so if we, in working with the horses, are aware of what those are and they partner on this journey, then it brings a real depth of meaning to us. And also being able, as we're, basically as we're opening up, holding space for the horse, these great things happen for us, and the horse feels better too. The horse can release tension, bring themselves back into their natural alignment, and then we both are in a better place after having spent our time together. And sometimes if you haven't been introduced before to this this technique of holding space, watching what happens with the horses, extending an invitation to them without making it a demand, then we can help support in the mindset behind that too. Because it's whenever we have a buildup of stress and pressure, we can go back to our default system. And a lot of times for us, a default system is succumbing to that critical voice or critical voices that we have inside that are telling us, well, we're not doing it right, we're not doing things good enough, somebody else is doing it better. And being in the present moment and having a soft, gentle focus on the horse, that allows us to calm and still most of those things which not only allows us to access our intuition, it helps us to better choose our thoughts too, because there isn't the pressure of the already existing neural ruts pulling us into those. Because, well, I know I'm still pulling out weeds a lot too, because we can get pretty gunked up from family history, society, mean kids, and mean adults. Sometimes they get us too. So what we'll do also to help with all of this is have we'll have one group coaching call a week, and after I get all of the puppies assembled, like herding cats, we'll see if we can get a day and time to have the coaching call when all of the participants can be there. And we'll have a secret Facebook group with a daily prompt to kind of help us. It's not going to tell us what to put in our mindset, but it's going to hopefully inspire us to adopt the perspective that will work for us. Because that's one of the things that I think my journey with horses has really taught me, is that, you know, of course there's skills, techniques, tips that we can all learn. There's horse behavior, there's certain types of interaction in riding, but we all each have our own, not only story inside of us, but our own desires, our own passions, our own skills and talents. And this is the foundation for how do we start combining all of those things to really live our lives by design. And this will kind of be the basis too, as branching into helping other people facilitate, you know, conduct healing sessions with horses as co-facilitators, because I think we need to start with the magic right away. That doesn't come in later necessarily, because some schools, some manners of training, they teach you all the tips and techniques, and yes, those are important. And nobody can really teach you what you have inside of you, but we can hold open that space for you to be able to identify and feel what emerges when we take the pressures off of having to conform or having to comply. And so this journey will be designed to help you harness and really step into that beautiful combination of you, and bring it into existence with what the horses offer, and be able to make your experience better, your horse and you. And also, if you start to bring human clients into this, you know, it turns into a real kind of a meld of all that beauty and wisdom, and then allows that person to benefit from all of those. So that's kind of a real quick, well, semi-quick overview of how mindset, you know, how it's the basis and the foundation and so important. And with our developing an equine focused mindset coming up next week, how that will be introduced, employed, and hopefully what you'll carry forth from going on that journey. So I don't know if anybody has any questions, comments.
Kim, have you found any behaviors or tactics or anything that's helpful if we do some weeding and the roots really didn't get taken out and it just kind of keeps popping up if there's a pattern? Have you found any tips to be helpful with that?
Yes, absolutely. And if identifying those roots, whether they're based in a phrase like you're not good enough at this, or you're being too selfish, you have to take care of other people. Kind of identifying what's linked to that root. It might also be a feeling in your body, like a collapse in your chest, a nervousness in your stomach, kind of a disconnect, kind of figuring out, well, figuring that out. And then, first of all, getting into that place of either, I feel kind of funny saying meditation, because I don't know if I ever really get to meditation, but I can be in the moment and I can be present with a horse. I mean, I now, fortunately, because I've been doing it so much, it does start to spill over. But anyhow, I'm not going to say meditation necessarily, but being in that present moment where we're not having any thoughts that are critical, that are judgmental. Our thoughts are either focused on the present moment, just experiencing what is, or they might have to be guided a little bit. Okay, well, let me focus on what my horse is doing, which does bring us into the present moment, but that's kind of one of the ways to get us there. And so if we start from that focused place, then, especially if we haven't been doing it a long time, something will come up that will shift us from that place. And, it could be something like, oh, a bird flies and that got my attention. Okay, well, that's not necessarily the same thing, but okay, so you're with your horse and you're noticing that, oh my gosh, well, his mouth is tightening up. And then if your next thought is, well, why did I make him do that? Now that's a clue. Okay, so here you are in the beauty and the stillness of the present moment, and something comes up causing you to think, I'm not doing something right. And so that, kind of following that trail, that could give you a clue to what the limiting belief is that's giving, because I think those give those roots an anchor. So if, we can find what is that cord grabbing onto and heal that insertion point, then it can't connect in the same way anymore.
And conversely, thoughts that would be of a more very helpful nature can be nurtured to grow deeply then.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think, that what I found having the last 2 weeks of 2018, I had to deal with a little bit of chaos. And I was really thrilled, and why I'm so excited to be, kind of packaging this and sharing it with other people, because I know without any doubt, 1,000%, that I was able to navigate through before what could have set me off in a tailspin. And I could, not that the things that happened weren't kind of intense and a big deal, but I could keep them in perspective and bring my thoughts on, okay, where do I want to go and what do I want, instead of pushing against these things that were happening. And when I did focus like that, I really think it helped open up creativity. It helped me be able, and sometimes being creative is just knowing who to ask for help, or knowing what direction to go. And if I had not been spending the last few years staring at my horse, watching the paint dry, so to speak, I know that I would not have been able to do this in the same way. And it was not that I want to call in more of that, but it was like, oh my gosh, this stuff really works. And it helps my horses be better, do better, participate more. It's just a win-win situation all around. So, and I see, sorry, Phil asked a question too that just caught my eye, but was before I get more distracted. Did that answer your question?
Oh yeah, thank you. Yep, it sure did. I'm going to re-listen. I wrote down at the time it was that where you said I'm focused on where I wanted to go instead of staying in what actually was. So I'm going to re-listen to that part.
Well, good, I'm recording.
Yes, I am glad.
All right, and so Phil, for this class, I didn't envision meeting in person. That's one of the reasons holding it in half in January, and probably 6 weeks will take us to the end of February. But like I was saying, this is kind of the launching pad, and I'm going to be offering more things in the future, and especially when the weather gets warmer, there will be definitely things to do in person and with the horses.
Yay.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Hey, Liz.
Hi. So, do you think that we can only plan when we're present then? We can only acutely plan when we're present? Because if we're planning and we're in that chaos and we're swirling, we're just grabbing at straws and we're not creating an honest plan for ourselves?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a great question. And I think that I know myself, there's been so many times, we either do things based in, like Marianne Williamson said, love or fear, scarcity or abundance. And especially if I'm feeling the pressure of a situation, oh my gosh, I have to do something about this. And if I don't do something about it, it's not going to change and I'm being irresponsible. But all of that pressure ignited by the critical voices really, it saps us of our intuition, our creativity, and it takes away the best of us. So letting, kind of starting from that place of being able to let go of the chaos or the pressure of the situation, I think that really then we get into what I was calling our heart set, where we can align with our values, our priorities, which most important to us, and set the intention, okay, I'd like to have this happen. I'd like to have a vehicle I can drive. So instead of, focusing on what I don't have, how can I open up that space? Who could I ask? Where can I look? And then it seems like our journey gets much smoother and easier because we don't have the pressure of the critical voices telling us we're doing it wrong, we're not working hard enough, and drawing our focus inward. Did that help?
Yeah, I think so. I just tried to do some grounding stuff and then go do some other things that are goal oriented, and it was just an interesting shift to have to make. Because it's very easy for me to be doing something with my body kinesthetically and make a plan, but then to sit down and do it or write it down or create a visual for it, there's like a gap there. So I was just trying to register with myself how unpresent I was being when I was obsessed with writing the right things down. Instead of like brushing my horse and letting those things just mull around.
Right. So basically you're moving around, grounding yourself, that connects your mind and body.
Yeah.
And so then when you sit down and get all in your head, that element of flow goes away.
Yeah. The planner I got, it has a not to-do list, and the first thing I wrote down was negative self-talk.
I love it.
Cancel that subscription, please, because it's hard to
Yeah.
write down your goals or plan your future when you're busy nagging on yourself.
Oh, sure. Because, it's really hard when we're in that place of strife, of lack, and it's hard to kind of capture all of that because it vibrates different than when we're peaceful or when we're joyful. The energies just don't match. And so whenever we try to create something, it really ends up that we draw to us whatever energy we're in when we try to create it. And so it's one of those things that is almost counterintuitive from how most of us have been brought up or society works, because I think just about every human that I've talked with enters into worry sometimes. And I know for myself and a lot of other people, it really felt like if I was worrying, I was being responsible. So if I'm not worrying about something, I'm being irresponsible. And if I'm being irresponsible, I'm going to get kicked out of the family, kicked out of the clan. Nobody wants somebody that's irresponsible around. So, in a loop like that, it's really, really hard to get rid of worrying because I feel like I'm doing my duty if I'm obsessing about something. And then I think it might have been Wayne Dyer talks about, a lot of people do, but he's one of my favorite guys, how worry is basically an unhealthy use of imagination. And so, if I can imagine any outcome, why do I want to imagine one I don't want to have happen? Which again, the beauty of being able to talk about things like this here, because a lot of this isn't new stuff. It's just a lot of times you end up hearing what you need to again at the right time, or just being able to focus on it. Because, you wake up at 2:00 in the morning, and how hard is it to have those calm, focused thoughts when you're dealing with an intense situation in that time? The worry's like, here, pick me, I'll get you through this. And I don't think that's based in truth. So
I have a question.
Hey, Amy.
Hi. So what you're just talking about, because I kind of find that when I get worried about something, it kind of catapults me into action.
Mm-hmm.
It'll either make me active to solve that problem, or I kind of just curl up within and kind of like pretend it's not there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think more and more it tends to make me act. But you're saying that's not a true action then, or?
Well,
that's from worrying?
Yeah, I think sometimes words don't really convey, because there can be a whole spectrum of worry. It can be starting from just recognizing, oh, I'm not feeling real comfortable with this situation. What can I do about it? That we could label that worry. But I think the other end of the spectrum, and that's a great question, and maybe it's something that I have put on there, because when I'm worrying myself, I am usually coming from the place of, I screwed up, I did it wrong, I have to make it right now, I missed something. There's an element somehow that I either did something wrong, or, oh my God, how can I possibly make this better or make this right? Or what can I do about this? So a lot of times there's almost a combination of over responsibility and helplessness when worry really spins out of control.
Do you think that compares to like positive and negative stress?
Absolutely.
Just because the positive stress is when we're anxious, but we're excited and something big is happening. And it might seem daunting, but we're really thrilled. And then there's the negative stress that like, oh, there's the bill and I didn't pay it this month. So just for another like contrast and making sure that I'm on the right page.
Oh, absolutely. And I think there's, sometimes when we can get stuck or our energy is really depressed, then whatever it takes to get that moving, it might at first look a little more like somebody giving us a little kick in the booty, but then once we're in motion, to be able to have ourselves more inspired than motivated. Because if we're inspired to something, it's like it pulls us forward, and motivation is kind of being pushed from behind. So I think that there's a combination of those, and I agree that sometimes if it weren't for deadlines, or I need to set a deadline on something because it's like, oh, that's a great idea, maybe someday I'll do that. Oh, that's a great idea, maybe someday I'll do that. All right, so it's been 3 weeks. When is someday? So I don't know, does any of that help, Amy?
Yeah, I think so. You kind of said it though, that, what did you say? Like when when you were saying, I worry that I either did it wrong or how can I make this better? I guess that's the part I was getting at. How can I make this better? Now, maybe that's what Liz was saying as far as the difference between positive and negative stress. Is that right? That would be more positive stress. How can I make this better?
I'm thinking so. I think Liz will pop in and tell us if we're taking it wrong direction.
No, I think that's right. I think there's a motivation to positive anxiety, and negative anxiety has like a self-depreciating to it, where if you're like, oh, I have to correct this, I think that's positive because you're improving.
Okay.
And I think probably there's an element of internal or external locus of control with that too. And I think, because if we have an internal locus of control, we feel like we have what it takes inside of us to make things different. If we are looking at something with an external locus of control, we feel like the external situation has to change and then we can do something, which external locus of control is really challenging to make changes in your life if you're operating that way all the time, or a large part of the time, or for me, any of the time. But I can't speak for everyone.
Yeah, that's true.
So does that answer it pretty well then? Or
yes.
Okay. I don't know, sometimes it's like, well, there isn't like a concrete answer, but and let me see, I have another question here. Okay, Phil. You know what? So Phil asked a question and says that she agrees with some of the things that we were talking about, which is cool, yay. And we could meet around this time, Tuesdays from 1:30, if everybody who's in the class can meet that time. I'm going to record everything because there may be times that everybody can't meet, and it's going to be a small group too. There's 8 is the absolute most people that will be in here. So hopefully we won't have that many schedules to work around. Okay, so
This time works for me. If this time works for me.
Me too.
Cool. Me 3. And Phil too. All right. So good. And we'll we'll see if we can get Liz there too.
Her schedule hasn't been given to her yet, so she does not know.
We'll just bribe your professors.
Sounds
yeah.
great.
All right. Well, barring any last comments or questions, I think I have emails for everybody here. I'll send you some of the particulars, and we'll open registration and possibly start next Tuesday. I'm very excited. It's going to be so fun.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, thank you for spending some time on Tuesday afternoon, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
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 Bye.